All right, let's get after it. There's a lot of science behind our topic today, but I think it starts with the conversation, right? These are a few points we're going to dive into today. It's just to introduce the idea that agreements have to be talked about early. It used to be different. So we'll talk through how to bring those up. And it's really how do we reduce resistance in this new climate, but also in general. Buyers are kind of like those they wander in and out of open houses. They'll know it when they see it. They just don't want to be locked into an agreement. You end up with a lot of that. Where sellers, they're stationary. They are this thing that you can approach and say, this is what I would do for your stationary object that I'll market to the general public. Where a buyer, it feels so much looser, doesn't it? At least that's always been my experience. And you really get into trouble when you've got buyers that are casually looking in the market and you don't quite have a framework to help them still be on your side and not end up working with someone else. And so it's partly in the communication, but it's also in the way we structure ourselves. So we're going to talk through both. But honestly, the trust with your buyers, it's earned through the experience you deliver after the agreement. And I think that's where the order got messed up. And I have a solution to it if that's something you resonate with. But don't you think a buyer, you almost have to demonstrate your value first before they trust you that you're a good fit for them? I don't know if you feel that. I was talking to Kyla yesterday, if she's on. I don't think she is. Yeah, I mean, we all have these problems with our nice open house leads, these buyer leads we create, and then they get really skittish when it comes down to working exclusively. So we'll talk about all that. The old approach, this was what we used to do all the time. We would build a rapport, show some homes. By doing so, it would build the rapport, and they can kind of try before they buy a little bit. And then finally, paperwork would come out at some point in that process. You'd say, look, I love working together, especially if they find a house they like, but you had this opportunity to show your value ahead of time. That's gone, right? That's gone. We can't demonstrate necessarily before we get into some type of exclusive. And so it really comes with the conversation agreement. And then we show, how do we sidestep do I trust you? Are you a good choice? Why would I be tied down to you when I could just go to more open houses? Does anyone get these objections real time today?
Yes.
To be clear, as a consumer, right? I'm biased. I love real estate. I love realtors, but I get it. I would feel the same if I were buying a house every 7 years. And let's say I didn't know anyone. I was out of town, came to a new area, so I didn't have an agent relationship. Maybe my previous agent stunk and I don't want to use them. There's a lot of reasons. And buyers are really concerned about getting locked into the wrong situation. And especially now we have these agreements coming out super fast and everyone's kind of feeling like the pressure of that. So how do we handle it? Here's what I would say. Let's get into, with the new climate, what I suggest we do. It's not that they don't want help. I think it's a large commitment concern on their control. They don't want to make the wrong choice. They can't trust you before. They'll lose control. So I would say your job early and often is to remove the risk of the relationship. And this happens before you prove your value. But I think that's actually a massive opportunity. You might feel where I'm going with this. Does anyone have a sense of where this is heading and where this might be a way around the new rules? Let's get into it. The agreement's not a trap. I mean, you got to position it as such. It's just a standard that exists. It's an industry requirement, but more importantly, it's something that you can use, not because you want them into an agreement, but it binds you to them, not them just to you. So I think this is often framed as, well, now you have to work with me or you are tied to me. And it's a little bit different. It's, I take on a certain amount of clients and they get my all. And there's a lot that goes into it. By the way, we're about to talk about what that is in a second. So you have a couple things to rattle. But it's not just binding you to me, it's me to you. And that is an important distinction. It's a two-way measuring contest, two-way street. So I think that's a starting point to frame the conversation, as these leads are like, why would I sign that right away? Right? But let's get into how you could start introducing this. It's obviously presented as a matter of fact, standard practice. I wouldn't put too much effort into explaining and over explaining why this has to happen. It's just the way it is, right? And being casual in the way you bring it up without over talking something gives that person the feeling that this isn't a big deal. It's just a part of the deal. And I would say introducing safety early in the process is a way to sidestep like 80, 90% of the concerns, which is I don't want to be trapped in an agreement. And so I highly suggest at the onset, including language in your additional provisions for a 24-hour cancellation clause. This agreement may be canceled for any reason without penalty with 24-hour written notice. In other words, this is the way it's got to be, but I'm not interested in tying anyone into an agreement that doesn't feel really good about working with me. And I realize you don't have the benefit to see everything that all my clients, all those 5-star reviews see, because we met 20 minutes ago, we met 2 days ago. But just to make it clear, I have to earn your business every day. And if there's something that isn't working for you at any point in the process, you have full control to unwind this relationship. I don't know about you, but if someone brought that level of confidence to me, I would be more confident in them. I actually highly recommend you do some version of this in both your listing and buyer broker agreements. Does anyone right now have a cancellation clause? I mean, I know there's the single party show, there's other tools in the toolkit, but in your exclusives, do you have cancellation clauses that are no penalty, short action? Lori, I see you nodding your head. Is that working for you? Are you getting good feedback on that?
Yeah, usually, I mean, I haven't done it too often, but yeah, that's the one we signed to kind of make it, a little bit easier on clients. So the harder ones that I've had, because I buy leads, from realtor.com. And so sometimes those are the really the hard ones to convert. So we have like a showing agreement. But it's really hard
Like a
to.
single show agreement for.
Yeah, that's what I try and do because, obviously you want to get in front of them, so it's like, okay, I'm meeting at the house, we're going to have to sign just an agreement just to go show the house. And then you try and, as quickly as you can, try and get some relationship and then get them to move forward. And so for me, that's kind of the struggle with that. So, but yes, I do have like an easy out agency agreement too. So, that works very well, but usually like the people who want to work with you don't really care. So
that's right. Yeah, I would say you're right. This is so, if you have a 24-hour cancellation clause or any type of easy out, you don't really need to talk about that at all, or even include it for people that it doesn't matter for. This is to get around the commitment phobe, the I met you at an open house, I like you, but conversation. In my experience, I was with Coldwell Banker, which was a very large international brokerage, and they did not like zero cost cancellations in their listing agreements. But I got my broker to just sign it anyway. He was like, fine, do what you want. And I started winning more listings because I would put that in there. And then I started doing it in my buyer broker agreements because I was one of the professional ones that wanted it at the beginning. Most of my colleagues were waiting until they found the right house. And like people were signing this stuff. And this was pretty controversial in the brokerage community at that time. At Compass, where I went next, they didn't like it. They went with it. I don't think it's that uncommon anymore, but if positioned properly, it's not just, hey, if I stink, get rid of me. It's to say, I am so confident in what I do and the value I provide that I have no problem including this. And by the way, I don't get paid until you sign the last document at the closing table. So I'm taking a huge risk by saying I'll work for free until you find the perfect place. And if you disagree at any point, get rid of me. And the fact is, this then gets around that. I need to see you in action before I trust you enough to sign an agreement like it was in the old days, right? Old days, you earn the agreement. Now you have to secure it and then earn the relationship. It's kind of it's flipped around. Now I realize a realtor.com lead, Lori or Andrea, I know you have Zillow coming in. These folks are not that open to this conversation in the first 10 minutes of you being on a call. And the goal there is to get speed to lead in front of them and start doing what you got to do. And so I like the tool that you have of single showing or whatever it takes. But as a whole, if you can get to that point to keep the conversation going, this is something I would definitely use on strangers as a show of confidence in your approach. And it binds me to you, not necessarily the other way around, but based on their goals and what they want, you believe you're a good fit to work together, but you'll have this out clause in case they disagree at any point. Most people that take that journey with you might be skeptical at the front end, but if you continue to earn the relationship, they will never invoke it. The bigger risk is on the listing side. We talked about this last month. You're sinking thousands of dollars into photos, into marketing and all these things. And if I have a zero cost cancellation clause, if you get a bad person, they could take full advantage and fire you and you're out all that money. And I get the concern. I'm just telling you, it doesn't happen very often. If you earn the relationship, this is a very rare thing. And so it's a risk worth taking, in my view, both on the buy and the sale side. Buy side, you're wagering your time. On the sale side, there's more investment. But in both cases, this is the beginning point of starting to just sidestep the horseshit that comes along with the commitment phobe of a buyer who wants to wander in and out of open houses. Now, we're going to talk about a lot more of your value here in a few minutes that go along with this, because this alone isn't enough. But I just think it's a starting point. Does anyone disagree? Any disagreeers? And I'm open to this, by the way. This is not a...
Hey, Jonathan, it's Amy. I don't disagree, but I'm curious because, if they send you something in writing, they can terminate
Yep.
the buyer rep anyway. So I don't know. How do you
Say that
juxtapose
again.
those two things?
They can
Well-
terminate even without a clause, you mean?
Yes, if they write in writing that they want to terminate their buyer rep agreement, or at least here in Texas, they can. There's like a 90-day protection period. But I'm just wondering, I mean, I like the 24-hour idea, but I've also pointed out to people before, you can just, send me something in writing that you want to terminate the agreement if you're not happy. I don't know, just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Does anyone else have that 90-day protection period? I know Virginia, Maryland, DC don't. Those are my 3 state licenses. But in your case, Amy, if there is a protection clause there, all good. I think the simpler you can, to do something, and from like a marketing perspective, look, there's this like complicated clause that says in the next 90 days, yada, yada. I'm going to make this really simple. In the additional provisions, no cost, no obligation, no questions asked, cancellation within 1 hour, 24 hours. You can put a time horizon, doesn't matter. If you're gone, you're gone. And so it just gives them full control without having to understand a bunch of legalese. If that paragraph is long and a little bit hard to get, which a lot of the real estate contracts I read are, just like shit simple in the additional provisions. And that gives you the ability to say, there are protections, but I'm going to make this really simple. This is what I do. And the reason I do it is because I know if we work together, you need to have that peace of mind. And I'm going to earn your trust and business every single day we're together. And if I don't for any reason, I'm out of here. Sound fair?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good way of presenting it, especially with people that don't know you, like just, random phone calls like I got one yesterday. That would have been a good thing.
And that's exactly right. It's about those stranger danger. I'm not sure yet. So if it's someone who's going to work with you, you kind of just don't even need to get into it. And in fact, I would even argue, you don't even have to put it in the agreement. Don't solve for what doesn't exist. But this is the silent killer for a lot of the open house warriors, and they just don't want to commit. Some of them have some bad intentions, meaning they aren't serious buyers, meaning they want a discount or they want a better deal by going straight to I'm not talking about them. We're about to get into value proposition a little bit, but your value should be aligned. And if you find someone who's in alignment, but feeling a little bit like, I just don't wake up and sign things with people I don't know yet, this is a way to give them that utmost confidence. And if you have those complicated contract clauses, but you literally handwrite additional provisions of single sentence that gives them the out, for me, I'm just like, that's a vote of confidence in myself that is easy for them to understand. Anyone else disagree with this clause? Or not that you disagree, Amy, but just have a comment on off ramps and agreements? Well, let's start with it because I think it might solve some of those issues. And in fact, it even allows you to have this conversation in a public facing piece of marketing that, your buyers might look at, whether it's social media, whether it's, a buyer guide you create. It's something that you can market. We want to make sure the language doesn't cheapen your value, but said correctly with the right framework can be actually a very powerful tool. It's like a written guarantee in an offer. Those things exist not because people don't give a shit, like consumers that are pulled, whether it's real estate transactions all the way down to widgets on Amazon. The consumer's number one concern isn't what they're going to get. It's actually, how bad am I possibly going to get screwed? Does anyone go to a Yelp page for a restaurant they want to try and read all the 5-star reviews? Or do you immediately look for the 1 stars and say to yourself, is this a problem with the restaurant or just the person's angry because they didn't get fair service or something, right? How many people look at the 5 stars first versus the 1 stars? Human behavior is like, I want to know how bad could this go? That's human nature. Now you got some really positive minded people that might buck that train. And if that's you, like claps up, you're one of 100. Most people are worried about how bad they're about to get screwed, and agreements just bring out that part of us. So the reason people have money back guarantees or all these different things is to give the consumer confidence. You're not going to get screwed more than like your initial investment. You'll get it back if it doesn't work. But how many people really cash in on money back guarantees? How many people really, take off ramps and cancellation clauses? The data is crystal clear, not many. In fact, rebates hardly get turned in. I mean, this is a common thing that marketers have known forever. So leverage it. But this does beg the second part of the question of like, what is our value in the transaction beyond you can cancel at any time and I'll open some doors for you? That's not your value. That's just a tool in the toolkit. What we actually have is this fundamental philosophical question to address and then start building value around which decision we make. To be clear, there is only two choices we ever have in our businesses. It's to get better, meaning offer more services, better experiences, greater outcomes for our clients, or to charge less to compete on the basis of fee, which a lot of those people say we do the same thing for less. You and I both know that's kind of not true, but fee can overcome service. If it's cheap enough, people don't care almost what it is. But that's not true of most people who are embarking on something serious like a real estate deal, or if you get audited by the IRS, you don't want the cheapest accountant, do you? You don't want to walk into court with the public defender that passed the law bar last week. You want the most badass person in that situation. The problem is a lot of agents that sound all the same. The consumer, your client, your potential client is left unsure of what the difference between you and them are. And so when you say I charge 3, don't worry, the seller likely pays, but like they hear 2.5, they hear 3, and you don't sound different than everyone else who's saying the same thing. They are only left to shop on the basis of price. Well, someone down there said 2. Yeah, and before that it was 1.25. And y'all sound kind of alike. I'm going with the other person. And so when we get into these like really difficult fee situations, it's not often because they're not willing to pay. I would say 25% are fee shopping, but 75% are just not sure you're any different for the amount you're charging. Now, back in the old good days, which was like not even 2 years ago, it was almost a foregone conclusion. Your buyer broker services were free. And I know fundamentally that hasn't changed, but the way we present it has. And so we have to start talking money similar to how we do in a listing agreement. I just want to make it abundantly clear, just like on the listing side, cheaper is a race to the bottom. Better is the only place we can end up. And better has to sound better. You can't just know it in your heart. It has to make sense to them, meaning the person who's walking in and out of open houses. Otherwise, they're just stuck with the other. A lot of agents are really not operating in either spot. They're not the best choice and they're not the cheapest option. That place is like, if you think World War I, no man's land, the distance between the two trenches where everyone dies, that's your business. In between, you're not better, you're not cheaper. So let's be clear, unless you want to get cheaper, we've got to find ways to always get better. Every successful business from Apple to Amazon to, the favorite brands that you work with every day, they don't sit back and say, we had a really good product a couple years ago and just chill. They're going out of business if they do that. Every year or whatever, they're getting better and better, offering more dynamic services. And I understand completely the amount of stuff that's already on your plate and being more valuable isn't always on the forefront, but it's true. Just like as a listing agent, as a buyer broker, as a buyer representation, we need to also find ways to become more valuable. And this is where sounding like everyone else is that no man's land. So I just want that to be kind of the North Star of this conversation, both on the sale, but we're talking buyer today, buyer side. We can't sound like everyone else. And so how do we do that? My favorite is to define to the end user, to the consumer, to the public facing marketing you're putting out there, what actually is the role of what it is you do. There's this company that I absolutely hate called Redfin that came along 20 years ago and said, all your listings are already online. We do it for 1%. We do the same thing, but for this price. There's been lots of companies like them, but they're the one who had all the money. They went public. Redfin's market share still sucks. So good on them. 20 years later, they're still spinning in neutral, not making money. But what is true is that those forces are in the market telling, they ran a Super Bowl ad, not this year, but a couple years ago. So people that are thinking about their buyer representation aren't necessarily thinking about best choice. They're thinking about that fee they might get stuck paying in that agreement. They're stuck thinking about, well, I can find the house online. These are different types of hurdles that a seller client doesn't have, right? Sellers don't really know how to market their house, prepare it, the paperwork, all the things. Buyers feel they're empowered to do it their way. And there are these really institutional cheap forces that will open doors for a lot less than you're willing to charge. So let's define our role, not as what they do, but what it is. These next two slides will give us some framework. If this resonates, but you don't feel like you've got some of this down, or it's not in your buyer guides, or it's not really front and center in the way you present your services to, your marketing world, let's change that. If you have a tab on your website for buyer representation and it just says you're a great choice, believe me, we got to change that. Let's make it make sense for the consumer. And so we don't need help finding homes anymore. Now, I will challenge that in a second. So I like playing both sides, but they don't think they need help with that. But they do need help with some other stuff. And it's not just about opening doors and providing access, because the argument is Redfin or one of these services will do it for you. And so I feel like it's really about winning, avoiding costly mistakes, the risk involved, and then making decisions under pressure. This is a hard process. And let's not minimize, especially if they tell you what's at stake, why they're doing this, those are really good reasons to come back to as you're talking through their situation to make you their best choice. If you were a lawyer, it would be like, how bad could this be? Could I go to prison for 10 years, 20 years? And if they are at risk of going to prison for a long time, they get a lot less concerned about what they're going to have to pay for the best representation, right? Now, in real estate world, it's not often the fear of loss they're thinking about. It's what they may or may not gain if they're paying you, but not, so we have to reframe that a little bit. And so my 4 pillars of buyer value proposition are simple. There's more than this, but I wanted to deduce it to the simplest version of what you do at the highest level possible. You provide access, you provide protection, strategy, and the experience. Experience is a big one, and decision support, another big one. Those kind of go together. I do think a lot of agents that are, especially newer agents that are mostly buyer heavy, are focusing on the access piece as a reason they should work together. And I don't think that's very strong anymore. It once was. It's a long time ago now that kind of went away, and Redfin really, I think, changed it. Zillow, all these portals really changed it. So access isn't the key issue. It's really about winning. Doesn't mean getting the house at all costs. Your timeline and terms, winning on your timeline and terms, and then doing it the right way so you're not making these costly mistakes that so many do. So when we structure the conversation around some of these core pillars, it's not that you necessarily are fundamentally different than other people, but if they're not talking about these as reasons to get proper representation, you're going to sound different. Does anyone have feedback, thoughts, objections to, things to add, or you think this is simple but too simple? Any feedback at all on sort of the modern role, and then the 4 pillars to maybe what your value proposition could be? I love complexity, but our end user needs to understand simple. And I think we can build the strongest case around these 4. I have others. Frankly, after testing many of these, you just find people not buying in on some of them, but these are the talking points that get people to understand your value in a different way. Said differently, on the inverse, someone who is just opening doors for 1% or whatever that service is in your market that does a terrible job, or their best friend that got the real estate license last week, they are providing access, but they can't really talk much about these others because that's not a priority. They're competing on the basis of fee, or in some cases, they're brand new or new to the industry and they're just leveraging the relationship. But what you have uncommon are these other factors. So let's reframe each one. I will send these slides out. If this is helpful in your presentations on your websites, great. But also I want you to start thinking about these terms so you have answers as people ask you. Well, what does it mean? I can just go to open houses. What does access look like? Well, let's start with the full market visibility. Do you think that, off market is next to it for a reason. About 10% of homes trade without ever hitting MLS. Love it or hate it, that's the reality of the world we're in today. Is anyone on this call done an off-market deal in the last 365 days, both either as a buyer or seller? Yeah. So to be clear, some of the best opportunities are not visible. With you, they are. That's part of access. But it's more important just to have those relationships that you've created as being a real estate professional in the industry that get you the inside track early and often on what's a great opportunity and when's it coming. Sales meetings, groups, industry connections. These are things that you forged that no portal online did. Does anyone have a group they're part of or attend the sales meetings and listen to the off-market stuff? Or maybe get a heads up on something that is coming to market, but have an inside relationship with the agent and can probably get the truth straight away on what they'll accept or what a good offer would look like? I must be the only one. No, I'm kidding. I've personally benefited a great deal from those relationships. If that's something you feel like you don't talk enough about, please start talking about it. Just because you know it doesn't mean they know it. Being a real estate professional with those relationships dovetails into access quite nicely. But seeing the market is one thing, getting those opportunities early. I mean, you could wait for the open house on Sunday, or I could tell you it's coming and we're there on day one, and I've got a great relationship with the listing agent. It's two different roads, same outcome. You're making an offer, but which one do you think is going to work better for you? Especially if it's more of a seller's market, this becomes very important. When markets flip, and it's easier to be a buyer than a seller, a little harder to say, but that's not common in many of our markets right now. Before I get into any questions on access, is this making sense? Cool. Let's get into the second piece, because I think access is actually the weakest one, but it is important to lean on. Winning. How many people have you represented that make offers and don't get houses because they paid a little bit less than they should have? And then they come back to you a day or a month or a year later and say, damn, that one got away. Happens. Sucks. It happens. My framework is, yeah, find the house you want, but securing it is a whole different ballgame. You can search on your iPad at night and find everything maybe I can find. I disagree, 10% I've got access to. But what you can't do is necessarily lock it down on your timeline and terms. I mean, you can overpay and do that, but with me, you are represented in all phases, and you're actually in a position to win. Not getting the house is losing, assuming it's the right deal for you. A lot of agents that have representation that's weak, that is inexperienced, that doesn't have the connections and frankly, the intentions in the right place, that are just cheaper than me, aren't going to help you win any better. They're just going to say, what do you want to offer? You tell them, they say, okay, I'll write it up. Sorry, you lost. Oh, damn. What would it take? You know, they're just there punching buttons, doing what you say you should do. Or for me, it's a strategy play where we work together. I think the reputation part of this is something we should all lean heavy on. Again, winning comes down to relationships. I don't know about you, but how many, whether it's you personally or people in your family, your kids, your friends that got jobs, not because their resume was the best, but because they had a friend who worked there who said, we should hire this person. Everyone has a story or 20 just like that. Do you think that the best person or the best piece of paper wins in real estate? It's often the person behind the story. How many seller clients say, where are they coming from? Do they have kids? What, like shit you can't say because of fair housing, but they want to know so bad who they're trading their house to. And so having relationship equity leverage is critical because you can talk with trust to the other side and put deals together. So winning goes far beyond you found it and you know what the asking price is. Your timeline and terms are a work of art. Any thoughts or questions on this second pillar?
I actually just had this yesterday. I put an offer in for a house that we personally were looking at. I was competing against 4 to 5 other offers, but I had done a deal with this person before. And they ended up taking our offer, even though it was listed. We didn't have as high of a purchase price, but it was a conservatorship deal. And because we had worked together and worked well together, they ended up accepting our offer. So,
well, congratulations, first of all, because it's yours. That's exciting.
no, I'm super excited.
And second of all, that should be an Instagram post this week. You can omit your name and you are the buyer. You could just say, this happened this week on a deal that I negotiated. It also should be a story we tell in our marketing, but frankly, these are little case studies that prove a larger point that has to be a part of the conversation of why me. Because with me, you get a much better professional with those relationships that we can then leverage so you get your timeline and terms. You don't just have to overpay like the rest of them. Sounds good to me. I mean, maybe I wasn't thinking about that because I just thought it was about getting access and but you're making some sense now, Lori. I'm kind of understanding. So all right, honey, should we talk to Lori? Yeah, I think Lori's a better, it's like you sow doubt, but you create certainty around what is actually important. And we all know winning on our timeline and terms as a buyer is the name of the game. No buyer ever said I would love to overpay, or no buyer ever said I'd love to lose out on the one that I really want. So it's like the Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just right offer. That's the one that I'm able to craft through relationships and also just experience. And I know what the hell I'm doing. And that's not true of everyone in this market. So yeah, framing it that way in your marketing and the conversation is a compelling part of the conversation. But here's another one. Protecting, people think about, contracts and paperwork, and that's part of it. Sure. When you miss something in a contract, it's expensive. But I'd also say that weak terms, like strong terms, are great when you can get away with it. But how many people add contingencies that are the reason they lost, in your experience at least, when they didn't necessarily care that much about that? Like they put in an appraisal contingency when they had plenty of cash and actually didn't really have value concerns, but they just wanted to do it because it was a smart thing to do. And that might have been the reason they lost. It certainly happened to me. And so striking the balance with proper terms without overpaying, underpaying, protection is really just representing you as we're mutually aligned. Sure, I'm emotional in the sense I care for you and I want this to work, but this is not me. And I'm going to be there to guide you and protect you through the uncertainty to ensure we're not over or underdoing it. There's some really silly things we can do to shoot ourselves in the foot. There are some smart things we should be looking at that will be acceptable. And I'll help you sort through all of it. And it's case by case. I can't give you one size fits all advice, but with the relationships I've crafted and the things I know through experience, that's the level of protection you get working with me. Good luck getting that on some iBuyer portal. So these are some of the things to think about with protection, but it's not only that. Does anyone else have other ways that they feel they protect their clients throughout this process?
So we kind of do things a little bit differently out here. The sellers in our area are the ones that obtain inspections. So what we do with our buyers, or when we're having a consultation, trying to get a buyer agreement signed, is that's part of our pitch to them, if you will. We do a deep dive into the disclosures and do a Zoom meeting and go through everything with you and, talk about what are the risks of purchasing, this house, and, what are the maintenance things you have to worry about, that type of thing. So we kind of do that up front. And I think that's won us a lot of buyer business.
That's super smart. I mean, deep diving before you even write the offer. And I guess, is that a California law or is that a Bay Area custom or norm?
No, this is just a Bay Area. Yeah. Like Southern California, they don't do it.
I coach a couple people down south. They don't talk to me about this. So
I think that I think it actually, it makes sense, right? Because if you have a seller and they obtain all of the inspections, then they can choose what they want to repair, and you present all of that to prospective buyers. It just seems backwards to me, right? So why would I negotiate? I got a contract accepted, but why am I negotiating the price twice? Or why am I negotiating repairs? So here we just do the negotiation up front, and then everything gets signed and we're good to go.
So most aren't inspecting again. Obviously, they just take this report and they make their offer based on it, and that's the end of the diligence period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Occasionally there will be an extra inspection for something. We had one where there was something with the foundation that we just needed more information on.
So we did have a contingency for that, but the seller is the one that paid for the foundation inspection.
Right.
And we were representing the buyer.
Well, the fact that you take that deep dive, it shows that you're fully committed, and you're giving them the inside track up front. That's perfect. And it's a version of protecting. But if I had a magic wand, I would say that's how all deals should be done. I cannot stand the norm of revisiting it 5-7 days later in some damn inspection after you just got through a contentious negotiation. So
one of the agents that I've worked with in the past here, she actually had a listing. She's licensed in Arizona as well. She had a listing in Arizona, and she did upfront inspections there. And all the agents that came through the door, they're like, this is amazing. So maybe for your people, if you're representing a seller, try doing the inspections first and see how, well the negotiating goes. You don't have to negotiate the deal twice.
Brenda, who's not here today, she's in Seattle. it's not common in Seattle. They do this. She does it for all of her listings as well as other things. It costs her in total another maybe $1,500 or $2,000. And I know that's a variable cost, but it's exactly what her experience has been. It increases her value proposition and creates less friction in the negotiation. So the fact that most Bay Area agents are doing this, I think you're just kind of like everyone else. But if that is not the norm in your market, like it isn't in Brenda's, please take their advice, because it's totally makes an impact with Brenda in Seattle. Who's the only person I know that does that religiously. Brilliant. Yeah. So good nugget there if you're representing sellers. Home inspections are the absolute worst. Absolute worst. But yeah, I think this is a third pillar to focus on, how we protect our clients, both from not just overpaying, but also the terms that they don't actually care about that they think they should care about. Most people aren't buying houses every year. Things change. Last time you bought a house, different market, different time, you may not have known to care about certain things that are now normal, and vice versa. So we help you through all that. But this one is probably the most important of the four. And it's something that, as good agents as you are, should be a very large part of the marketing you do, the follow-ups you have with these buyer leads, how you create a great experience and really provide that decision support. I already know you do this. If you don't say you do this, they may not understand that this is a big part of what makes you so great at what you do. If anyone's in coaching, we've probably done your care and competency story. And if not, we're probably getting there real soon. But there's a big part of every transaction that is made better through the experience and obviously the sound decision support you provide. It's so hard to quantify, but it's a often misunderstood part on the buying side. This shit is hard. It is stressful. There are no less than 8 parties to every transaction: seller, seller's agent, buyer, buyer's agent, inspector, lender, appraiser, title rep, right? These are many moving parts, all of which don't really care about the other person's job. You're the only one who actually is like the conductor, making sure everyone does what they're supposed to. Do you think the appraiser cares about the inspector or the lender cares about the title rep? Nah, they're just trying to do their thing. And so providing a great experience goes beyond just saying you'll enjoy it. It's how you orchestrate and structure and organize all of those parts to ensure things happen on time and we don't miss. And we get to there, not just on time, but without pulling your freaking hair out and losing your mind. There's a lot of stuff that goes wrong. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a big one. The vendor network, I would say if you don't have this front and center for your buyers, please start including it. Do you know good painters? Do you know good handymen? Do you know good landscapers? Do you know good roofers? The ownership costs begin once closing happens. And I would position you as someone that has access to those during the transaction, but long thereafter. And that by working with you, you get access to your trusted network, which are great prices and honest, hardworking people. It's a really big part of what people rely on. And maybe you already do this, but if you're not clear about it, they don't know. So yeah, these are some of the things that I would definitely lean on. Is there anything about the experience that you provide that you feel like sets you apart with the buyers you work with? Anything specific that comes to mind that you just feel like is something your buyer clients love about your process working with you? Something you hear so often in your 5-star reviews. Anything come to mind?
I think for us, it's doing those deep dives into the disclosures. Like we will do a Zoom call at 9:00 at night when our clients' kids are in bed, and just going over everything. So we've had a lot of good feedback and reviews based on that, and just honesty, right? Honest opinion. Like if it were me buying this house, this wouldn't, this is like a $5 fix kind of thing.
Love it. That's exactly the direction. Anything else come to mind, whether it's for y'all or anyone else?
Jonathan, it's Amy. I spend a lot of time on the appraisal side just because I always want to make sure we don't have any appraisal issues. So I know everybody usually, or not everybody, but a lot of people provide comps, but I do comps plus I do a big cover letter and I write all the details about the transaction. Like we had multiple offers or it was only on the market so many days, and I compare it to the other properties and just kind of like do a whole big summary plus all my comps. And I've had very good luck with it with appraisers so far.
I know Kendra and Lindsay were doing that just the other day on pause. We were talking about it, right? It's another
Yeah. We do that too. And I was talking to an appraiser, and one of the things that they said that helps them more is not so much just showing up with comps, but actually writing notes and even bringing the, don't cherry pick your comps, right? Even bringing the ones that don't make sense, but an appraiser might pick them up. And if you have notes on it, the reason why this is not a good comp is because blah, 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 blah. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 100%. I had one just recently where it sold, it was like a fire sale, and I called the agent and found out why it sold for so cheap. And the guy just wanted to get rid of it. He didn't want to deal with it. So I made sure to let the appraiser know this is why this sold for so little. I called the agent, blah, blah, blah. And I think that really helped because I was scared of that comp.
Yeah. Yeah. We do that all the time too. We bring comps, but have, try and pull the comps, not just if it's hard property comp, we try and go outside of the area and find a neighborhood. This is why that Top Hab website was so good for us. And we go outside of an area that has the same kind of value. So we do all of that too.
So my challenge for both of you is that a known part of your buyer value proposition, whether it's in the public facing marketing, your buyer guides, or just a part of the conversation that you want to highlight as you're having a cup of coffee with a potential buyer lead?
It is not in ours yet, but now it will be. It's going on our doing list.
Cool.
And the other thing that I think I mentioned this to you in our call the other day, Jonathan, is I've actually challenged appraisers and challenged the report with the underwriter and, have prepared a rebuttal and submitted it. And I've won. I've done them a few times. I've won 4 of them. So
I think that should be, this doesn't happen often. When it does, it's really expensive. And I've challenged 4 and won 4. I don't know. There's just some, you'd have to clean that up, but these are the types of things that are really hard to quantify. But if in your heart, you do it and it's not front and center and they get it, it's a missed opportunity. And we can't say everything we do, but we have to pick the important ones. And the idea behind these 4 pillars is you can stuff a couple items under each one that become the value prop, the thing you talk about. Just like you probably do with your seller clients. So you don't talk about every little granular, but you're like, look, we're going to get these things right. This is how I do it. And it becomes their focus now on what you know to be important. So I love it. The fact that you all have these appraiser expertise, this should be a part of one of your pillars. And it's probably the most meaningful one, but can you think of anything that would create a better experience, understanding what goes through in a buyer's transaction that maybe feels like easy to do, would make their experience just slightly better? Anything come to mind? What I like to do, today's not a value prop workshop. I haven't done one in a while, but we get a whiteboard out and we just start brainstorming how to be more valuable buyer brokers, buyer listing agents. Some of the ideas that I find to be beneficial that I personally used was we do a professional deep clean on closing day. So you don't have to. That's just an experience thing that we're going to provide. It's a few $100, but you just it's great. If you're on the buyer side and you have a nice photographer, somebody that you can pay $100 to go out and take some shots, we get a photo shoot done with you in front of the house with your keys, so you can have it as a memory thing. So on closing day, we're gonna have a professional show up. I don't know, there's these little things you can do to just make it a more fun, enjoyable experience. It's going to be chaotic and we're going to get it right, but here's a couple ways to make your life easier. I think for some of you, especially the teams or the small teams, 7-day-a-week coverage. I know you don't work 7 days, but you have someone that can cover when you can't. That would be a really nice thing. I work with a small group and we have 7-day-a-week coverage. There's never a day we're out of pocket. If you need something, things move fast, unpredictable. I don't know. There's a lot of things you can add to the experience side of it, which is probably the most important. Again, so I challenge you to think through it. Those are some of my ideas that I personally had. But if anything comes to mind that you already do, we got to draw it out and get it into this 4th pillar. Make sense?
Can I just share
Go ahead.
Can I share one thing that I've done in the past that's been really helpful? Right before closing, or a week or so before closing, I used to send a pizza order form. So on that, it would be what kind of pizza do you like? And what kind of beverages do you like? And let me know the day of your moving and I'll deliver it to you. And this is for, if you have people helping you move, if you have movers, whatever. So I've delivered pizza on moving day, and buyers love it because I'm that's the one thing that you don't have to worry about finding forks or, what are we going to eat? Doing takeout. Dinner's already done for you.
Freaking great. I love that. Costs you probably under $100, but makes their day, right?
And it's a tax write-off, right? Because it's a meal.
Yes, indeed. I like the way you're thinking. Well, these are all great ideas. And I wonder, I mean, in a different environment, we can start to package them up to be the experience they receive as a working part of your value proposition. But I already know everyone on this call and anyone listening to this recording has some of these that in their heart, they know they do. And it's priority and all the things. We just have to distill it into something that they get that sounds different than what they would get in a different situation. And I don't know about you, but I value the experience I get when I travel, when I work with professionals, when I do about anything. And your highest paying clients are those that value not just the results, but the experience along the way. And there's a lot of differentiation you can do, not in your price, but in the experience you deliver that gets people to want to work with you, regardless, even if you're slightly more than someone else they're talking to. But it's our job to articulate. I think that's the homework for all of us. And because we're up against it, and we have a part two, we're going to put, I mean, I know this might feel like an incomplete place to stop. We're going to have one more slide and then we'll wrap. But don't worry, there's a part two, which is then the brass tacks of how we go about some of these things. But this is how the conversation needs to start moving. I believe if you kind of integrate this one sentence somewhere into your, just like, this is what you get with me, you're going to make a lot of people understand quickly. Acknowledge finding is probably very easy. It's the easy part, at least. But making the right decision, protecting you from the wrong decisions, like that's truly what you get when you work with me, as well as a damn good experience and an outcome on your timeline and terms. If you can get comfortable talking like that, people may not need to understand every granular thing you do, but they get, okay, that checks out. And if they're fee shopping, it won't matter. They're just going to be like, cool. Anyway, would you do it for, you'll just have a price conversation. You know what you have at that point. And that's your decision. But for someone that values expertise, competence, enthusiasm, giving a shit, they're going to resonate with a message that looks like that. And so I think distilling something simple like that would be a strong way to go. So we're going to have a part two to this. Before I jump off, any thoughts or questions